The massive Galactic Council station hung in space like a glittering jewel, its spiral arms stretching for miles in every direction. Ships of countless designs docked and departed in a carefully orchestrated dance that spoke of centuries of interstellar cooperation. Ambassador Jackson Adams stood at the viewport of the Earth vessel, Hope, trying to calm his racing heart. After decades of searching the stars, humanity had finally received a transmission from the Galactic Council 3 months ago. Now, as Earth's first official representative, the weight of an entire planet rested on his shoulders. "We're being guided to Docking Bay," announced Captain Miller from behind him. "Strange, though. They're directing us to the outer ring." Jackson nodded, not understanding the significance. The small diplomatic team, 5 humans chosen to represent Earth's finest qualities, gathered their materials and prepared for first contact. They had rehearsed this moment countless times. "Remember," Jackson told his team, "we come as equals, seeking friendship and knowledge." The ship settled into a docking bay that appeared significantly more worn than those they had passed. Paint peeled from walls, and lighting flickered inconsistently. Jackson frowned but maintained his composure. Perhaps this was some kind of test. A delegation awaited them. 3 aliens of different species, one tall and insect-like with compound eyes, another short with blue-tinted skin and no visible nose, and the third floating several inches off the ground, its body semi-transparent. "Greetings," Jackson began with practiced dignity. "On behalf of Earth and all humanity, we—" "Yes, yes," interrupted the blue alien, waving a 3-fingered hand dismissively. "The primitive carbon-based species. We have your data packet. Follow us." Jackson exchanged concerned glances with Dr. Lisa Parker, Earth's leading xenobiologist. This wasn't the welcome they had expected. As they walked through the station's corridors, Jackson noticed other alien species watching them with what could only be described as amusement. Some even pointed and made sounds that resembled laughter. They arrived at a small chamber where a semicircle of aliens sat behind an elevated desk. The central figure, a humanoid with silvery skin and eyes that glowed with inner light, leaned forward. "Earth representatives," it announced in a voice that seemed to bypass their ears and speak directly to their minds. "I am High Counselor Tarim. We welcome you to Galactic Society." Jackson stepped forward with a smile. "Thank you, High Counselor. We come." "Your civilization has been classified as Class D," Tarim continued as if Jackson hadn't spoken. "This grants you limited trading rights, restricted travel corridors, and observational status at Council proceedings." "I'm sorry, but what does Class D mean?" asked Dr. Parker. A ripple of what sounded like laughter moved through the Council members. The insect-like alien clicked something to its neighbor, who made a gurgling sound in response. "Class D," explained Tarim with exaggerated patience, "is our designation for species who have achieved basic space travel but lack fundamental understanding of cosmic principles. Your propulsion systems are laughably inefficient. Your understanding of physics is quaint." Jackson felt his face growing hot. "With respect, High Counselor, humanity has made remarkable progress in just a few centuries. We're quick learners and eager to—" "Your species still fights wars over primitive resources," interrupted a counselor with tentacles where a face should be. "You poison your own atmosphere and can barely manage your population growth." "And yet you've granted us membership?" Jackson asked, trying to salvage the situation. Tarim's glowing eyes dimmed slightly. "We are a charitable organization, Ambassador Adams. All sentient life deserves some place in the cosmos." As they left the chamber, Jackson's team walked in stunned silence. Their quarters, they discovered, were located in an abandoned maintenance section of the station, far from the central hubs of activity. "They're treating us like children," muttered Security Officer Tom Grant. "Worse than children, like pets." Jackson stared out at the vast station stretching before them, then at the small Earth flag they had brought to plant in this new frontier. "They may mock us now," he said quietly, but they don't know humans very well. We've been underestimated before. He had no idea how prophetic those words would prove to be. 5 years passed since Earth's first awkward steps into the galactic community. The initial excitement back home had faded into a grim determination to prove humanity's worth. Earth now maintained a small trading post on the outer ring of the Council Station, and a fleet of retrofitted ships carried goods between human colonies and alien worlds. Commander Alex Morgan stood on the bridge of the Defiant, Earth's newest vessel. Unlike the sleek, almost artistic ships of other races, Earth vessels were practical, a patchwork of human ingenuity and reverse-engineered alien tech. The result wasn't pretty, but it worked. "Another Council ship just changed course to avoid us," reported Lieutenant Wade, watching the sensor display. "Seems they don't want to share the same flight path." Alex sighed. This was normal. Despite 5 years of reliable service and fair trading, Earth ships were treated like garbage haulers. Council races avoided them. Docking officials inspected them more thoroughly, and their crews faced constant disrespect. "Let them keep their distance," Alex replied. "Just means they won't notice when we exceed our cargo quotas." The crew chuckled. Humanity had become experts at finding loopholes in the Council's restrictive regulations. As they approached the trading station in the Centauri sector, emergency signals flooded their communication system. "Multiple distress calls coming in," Lieutenant Wade announced, suddenly alert. "A settlement on Proxima B is under attack." "By whom?" Alex asked, already plotting a course change. "The Vex." Everyone on the bridge fell silent. The Vex had appeared 8 months ago, a mysterious species that attacked without warning or apparent motive. They left destruction in their wake, taking resources and occasionally abducting individuals from various species. "Council response time?" Alex asked. "At least 6 hours," Wade replied after checking their database. "The nearest patrol is handling a diplomatic mission." Alex made a quick decision. "Set course for Proxima B maximum speed." "Commander," Wade said cautiously, "Council regulations state that Class D civilizations cannot engage in military actions without—" "I know the regulations," Alex cut in. "But I also know those people won't last 6 hours. Log it as a navigation error if you want." When they arrived at Proxima B, the settlement was already partially destroyed. 3 Vex ships, organic-looking vessels with spike-like protrusions, circled the colony like predators. "They're focusing on the mining facilities," observed Security Chief Maria Diaz. "Same as the attacks on Rigel and Deneb." "There's a pattern here," Alex muttered. "Why doesn't the Council see it?" The Defiant wasn't built for combat, but Earth ships carried weapons, another rule they quietly bent. Alex ordered precision strikes against the smallest Vex vessel, disabling its propulsion system. The other Vex ships immediately turned their attention to the Defiant. "Evasive maneuvers," Alex ordered as energy beams lanced toward them. What followed was a desperate game of cat and mouse. The Defiant couldn't match the Vex for firepower, but human pilots had centuries of experience flying unpredictably. While Council ships relied on computer-optimized flight paths, humans still valued instinct. "They can't anticipate what we'll do next because we don't know ourselves," Alex told the crew with grim humor as they pulled a maneuver that nearly tore the ship apart. The distraction worked. While the Vex focused on the Defiant, colony ships escaped with hundreds of civilians. When Council forces finally arrived, they found the settlement damaged but many lives saved, and the Defiant limping away with severe damage. Later, at the Council hearing, Alex stood before the same semicircle of officials who had once dismissed Jackson Adams. "You violated 17 separate regulations," stated High Counselor Terram. "Class D civilizations are not authorized to engage hostiles." "We saved 342 lives," Alex replied evenly. "That is irrelevant. The Council manages galactic security, not humans." Dr. Ray Wilson, Earth's new science envoy, spoke up from beside Alex. "With respect, High Counselor, We've been tracking these Vex attacks. They're not random. They're systematic, and they're getting worse. Your primitive analysis is noted, Tarim said dismissively. The Vex are simply pirates seeking resources. As they left the chamber, Dr. Wilson showed Alex his datapad. They're wrong, he whispered. The Vex are mapping defense systems with each attack. I can prove it. Alex looked at the complex equations on the screen. The Council won't listen to us now. Then we'll make them listen, Wilson replied, when the evidence becomes too clear to ignore. Dr. Ray Wilson hadn't slept properly in weeks. His office walls were covered with star charts, attack trajectories, and mathematical formulas that no one else seemed to understand. Dark circles rimmed his eyes as he stared at the holographic display, adding the latest Vex attack to his model. There, he whispered as the new data point pulsed red on his map. Just where I predicted. The door slid open, and Commander Alex Morgan entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. You look terrible, Alex said, handing him a steaming cup. Thanks, Ray replied, unsure if Alex meant the coffee or the comment. But look at this. The Vex just hit the mining colony on Taurus IV. Alex frowned. That's the 3rd mining facility this month. The 17th in this specific pattern, Ray corrected, typing rapidly. The holographic display zoomed out, showing dozens of attack sites across Council space. Most people see random attacks. I see a search algorithm. Explain it simply, Alex requested, sipping his coffee. Ray pointed to the glowing dots. The Vex aren't just raiding. They're testing defenses, cataloging responses, and gathering intelligence. Each attack builds on data from previous ones. He tapped a sequence of locations. These 5 attacks determined the response time of Council patrols. These 3 revealed shield frequencies. These tested weapons capabilities. Alex stared at the pattern emerging before his eyes. They're preparing for something bigger. A full-scale invasion, Ray confirmed. My calculations suggest they'll have enough data within 2 months to launch a coordinated attack against major Council worlds. We need to warn the Council. Ray laughed bitterly. I've tried. 3 times. They dismissed my work as primitive human pattern-seeking behavior. Alex studied the data points. Then we need proof they can't ignore. 2 days later, they stood again before the Galactic Council. This time, they'd brought their evidence directly to an emergency session. High Counselor Tarim looked particularly annoyed at the interruption. Dr. Wilson, the Council has already reviewed and dismissed your theories, Tarim stated coldly. The Vex are a nuisance, not an existential threat. Ray stepped forward, activating his holographic display. With respect, High Counselor, I've mapped every Vex attack over the past year. They follow a clear mathematical progression. The display showed a 3-dimensional model of Council space with attack patterns highlighted. The insect-like Council member clicked dismissively. Humans see patterns where none exist. It's a known psychological flaw in your species. Then explain why I can predict their next targets, Ray challenged, showing a list of locations. These 7 systems will be attacked within the next 10 days, in this exact order. The Council members exchanged glances. Preposterous, said the blue-skinned alien. The Vex are mindless scavengers. They are a hive intelligence gathering tactical data, Ray insisted. And they're almost finished. Enough. Tarim's voice boomed. We will not be lectured by a Class D species on matters of galactic security. This session is adjourned. As they left the chamber, an aide rushed up to them, eyes wide with panic. Commander Morgan, Dr. Wilson, Outpost Sigma has been attacked. It's gone. Ray checked his data. Sigma wasn't on my list. It's too soon, unless... His face paled. They're accelerating their timeline. 3 days later, as Earth's warnings were still being processed through Council bureaucracy, the largest Vex fleet yet seen emerged near a major Council world. The planet's defenses, designed by the finest Council engineers, fell within hours. Millions died. Amid the chaos of emergency broadcasts and panicked evacuations, Ray received a message. The Council was requesting, no, demanding, his presence at an emergency session. When they arrived, the Council chamber was in disarray. Several seats stood empty where representatives had rushed to defend their homeworlds. Dr. Wilson, Taram said, the glow in his eyes dimmed by what might have been fear. Perhaps we were hasty in dismissing your analysis. The Council would value Earth's insight on the current situation. Ray looked at the desperate faces around him. The pattern is clear now, isn't it? You're not dealing with raiders. You're dealing with an invasion force that's been studying you for a year. And they've learned all your weaknesses. Can you help us? Asked Taram, pride giving way to desperation. We'll try, Ray replied simply. But you should have listened sooner. Captain Diane Foster squinted through the viewport at the small mining colony below. Nestled between rocky outcroppings on the moon's surface, the settlement looked peaceful, but her instruments told a different story. Vex ships approaching from the dark side, reported her tactical officer, Ben Torres. 5 vessels, standard attack formation. Diane nodded grimly. Her ship, the Relentless, wasn't supposed to be here. Official Council orders were to evacuate, not defend. But evacuation would mean leaving the colony's valuable ore processing facility intact, or the Vex would use to build more ships. All hands to battle stations, she ordered. And someone remind the Council engineers to stay out of our way. The 3 Council technicians on board looked offended. They had been assigned to observe Earth's primitive combat techniques, but their constant suggestions were driving Diane's crew mad. Captain, said the tallest alien, Mentor, his silver skin reflecting the bridge lights. Council protocol dictates a direct confrontation to establish defensive perimeter. And that's exactly what the Vex expect, Diane replied, studying the colony layout. We're doing something different. She turned to her crew. Power down all systems except life support. Drift into position behind the larger moon fragment. Torres, prep mining charges. Mining charges? Mentor exclaimed. Those are not weapons. Diane smiled thinly. They are now. The Relentless went dark, drifting silently into position as the Vex ships descended toward the colony. Emergency transports were already evacuating civilians, but too slowly. The Vex would arrive before everyone could escape. The Vex always follow the same attack pattern against mining colonies, Diane explained to her confused crew and the bewildered Council observers. They disable communications, then power generators, then landing fields. How is this information useful? Asked Mentor. Because we can use their predictability against them. She pointed to locations around the colony. We're going to lay traps where we know they'll go. While the Vex began their approach, Diane sent small teams to plant mining charges at the colony's power stations and landing pads. Others positioned the ship's shuttle as bait, making it appear to be a straggler trying to escape. This is most irregular, muttered one of the Council engineers. There are no simulations for such tactics. That's the point, Torres explained. Humans don't fight according to simulations. When the Vex ships descended toward the colony, they split up exactly as Diane had predicted. 2 vessels approached the shuttle, weapons charging. Now, Diane ordered. The shuttle's engines ignited at full power, sending it straight toward the Vex ships in what appeared to be a suicide run. The Vex easily dodged the small craft and flew directly into the field of mining charges hidden among nearby debris. The explosions weren't powerful enough to destroy the Vex ships, but they damaged their sensors. Blinded, the vessels fired randomly, hitting each other. Simultaneously, the charges at the colony detonated as Vex ground forces approached the power stations. Relentless, attack pattern Delta, Diane commanded. Her ship roared to life, emerging from hiding to strike the damaged Vex vessels. The battle was chaotic, messy, and nothing like the carefully choreographed warfare the Council races practiced. The Relentless took heavy damage, but their unpredictable maneuvers confused the Vex. Human pilots made decisions that no algorithm could anticipate, sometimes brilliant, sometimes foolish, but always unexpected. When Council reinforcements finally arrived, they found a successful defense instead of the expected devastation. The colony was damaged but intact, most civilians saved, and 3 Vex ships destroyed. In the aftermath, Mentor approached Diane as she supervised repairs. "Your methods are unorthodox," he admitted, watching human crews weld patches onto the ship's hull. "Unorthodox works against the Vex," Diane replied. "They learn patterns and adapt, so we don't give them patterns to learn." Mentor's silver face reflected the welding sparks. "The Council's combat algorithms are based on 10,000 years of warfare data, and they're failing against the Vex," Diane pointed out. "Sometimes new problems need new solutions." A message arrived from Galactic Command. More colonies were under attack, more Council ships were falling, and more human vessels were being requested on the front lines. "They're starting to understand," Diane told Torres as they prepared to depart. "Humans don't fight perfectly. We fight creatively, and against the Vex. That might make all the difference." Marcus Reed wiped sweat from his forehead as he examined the damaged Council weapon. The laboratory around him buzzed with activity. Council scientists in pristine uniforms working alongside disheveled human engineers. It was an unlikely partnership born of desperation. "I don't understand," said the Council's chief weapons developer, an elegant being named Vorin. "The design is flawless. The energy distribution is perfect. The targeting system has 0 margin of error." "That's the problem," Marcus replied, looking up from the disassembled weapon. "It's too perfect." Vorin's face, a smooth oval with luminous eyes, registered confusion. "How can perfection be a flaw?" Marcus held up the central firing crystal. "The Vex have figured out exactly how your weapons work, because they always work the same way. They've adapted their shields to the precise frequency your weapons emit." 3 months into the war, the situation had grown dire. Vex forces had captured 12 major systems. Council defenses, once considered impenetrable, fell with alarming speed. Only human-led squadrons showed any consistent success, though no one could explain why. Until now. "Look at this," Marcus said, projecting a recording of recent battles. Council ships fire, and Vex shields instantly adjust to the perfect frequency to block them. "It's like they know exactly what's coming." "Of course they do," added Dr. Lisa Parker, who had joined the weapons team. "Council technology is built to be consistent. Every weapon identical to the last decimal point. Every shield harmonized to the same frequency." Vorin looked offended. "Consistency is the foundation of advanced engineering." "It's also predictable," Marcus countered. He grabbed a human-made rifle from a nearby table. "Our weapons aren't as powerful as yours, but look inside." He opened the casing to reveal the internal components, where Council technology featured perfect crystalline structures and immaculate circuitry. The human weapon contained what looked like deliberate irregularities. "We introduce controlled randomness," Marcus explained. "This coil is wound slightly differently in each weapon. This power regulator fluctuates within an acceptable range. The result is weapons that behave slightly differently each time they're fired." "Imperfection by design," Lisa added. "The Vex can't predict precisely what our weapons will do because we don't know ourselves." Vorin studied the human rifle with new interest. "You deliberately make inferior technology." "Not inferior," Marcus corrected. "Adaptable. Unpredictable. The difference matters." The Council's high science director entered the lab, flanked by military officials. For once, they weren't looking down their noses at the humans. "We need solutions," the director stated bluntly. "The Vex have adapted to all our standard weaponry." Marcus took a deep breath. "We need to modify every Council weapon with randomization modules. Introduce controlled chaos into the system." "Chaos?" The director looked horrified. "Our entire civilization is built on order and precision." "And that's exactly what's killing you," Marcus replied. "The Vex learn patterns. Your technology is nothing but patterns. A tense silence filled the lab. Council philosophy had always valued perfection above all. What Marcus proposed went against thousands of years of their development. Finally, the director nodded. How quickly can you implement these modifications? We'll need every manufacturing facility you can spare, Marcus said, and human engineers to oversee the process. Within days, Earth's manufacturing colonies were running at full capacity. Human engineers worked alongside council technicians, teaching them something they had never considered: how to intentionally build imperfection into their designs. Earth ships began carrying modified weapons into battle. For the first time, Vex shields failed against council technology. The weapons were less efficient, less beautiful, but effective. As reports of successful engagements filtered in, Vorin found Marcus in the lab, still working on refinements. I have spent my entire career seeking perfection, Vorin admitted. It is difficult to accept that imperfection saved us. Marcus smiled tiredly. Humans learned long ago that perfect plans rarely survive contact with reality. We adapted. The council believed your species primitive, Vorin said quietly. We were wrong. Not primitive, Marcus corrected. Just differently evolved. You mastered the universe through order. We survived through chaos. For the first time in the war, the tide was turning. The Vex advance had stalled, confused by weapons they couldn't predict. And across council space, a new phrase entered the military lexicon: the human factor. General Thomas Hayes stood before the full Galactic Council, still wearing his battle-scarred uniform. The chamber, once a place where humans were mocked, now fell silent as he approached the central podium. Representatives from 200 species watched him with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. The Council has requested Earth's leadership in the war effort, High Counselor Tarim announced, his voice lacking its former condescension. General Hayes, we await your response. Thomas surveyed the chamber, noting the empty seats where representatives of fallen worlds once sat. 8 months of war had humbled even the proudest council races. Earth accepts this responsibility, Thomas said simply. But we will fight this war our way. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. A tall crystalline being rose from the second tier. What exactly does our way mean, General? Thomas activated the central display, showing combat footage from recent battles. The Vex adapt to patterns. Your military doctrines are built on patterns. Perfect formations, standardized responses, optimal tactics. He switched to footage of human-led squadrons engaging Vex forces with what looked like chaos. Ships breaking formation, weapons firing at seemingly random intervals, tactics changing mid-battle. This is the Earth Doctrine, Thomas explained. Controlled unpredictability. We train soldiers to think independently, to improvise, to surprise even their own commanders. The crystalline being looked disturbed. You propose abandoning 10,000 years of military science. I propose supplementing it with something the Vex can't predict, Thomas countered. Human instinct. Over the next 2 weeks, the galaxy witnessed an unprecedented military reorganization. Council officers were paired with human counterparts. Training centers established on Earth colonies taught alien soldiers to embrace chaos, a concept many found deeply uncomfortable. In a massive hangar on the Council's primary fleet base, Thomas walked between rows of alien soldiers attempting to learn human combat techniques. The sight would have been comical if the stakes weren't so high. Elegant council warriors trying to master the messy, instinctive moves that humans had developed over centuries of warfare. They're struggling, observed his aide, Lieutenant Foster. Of course they are, Thomas replied. We're asking them to unlearn everything they know. A training officer approached, looking frustrated. The Arcturian contingent refuses to break formation during drills. They say synchronized movement is fundamental to their species. Thomas nodded. Then we use that. Make their entire unit a wild card in the larger strategy. It's not about making everyone fight like humans. It's about making the overall approach unpredictable. The breakthrough came during a training exercise against simulated Vex forces. Council units initially followed their traditional patterns, resulting in simulated casualties. But when facing imminent defeat, a young officer from the aquatic Meridian species improvised a desperate maneuver, something that violated every principle of Council tactics. It worked. The simulation showed a victory. Word spread quickly. Council officers began experimenting with human thinking, as they called it. Military hierarchies loosened. Battle plans incorporated randomness. And for the first time, the combined fleet won 3 consecutive engagements against the Vex. 1 month later, Thomas stood on the bridge of the flagship Unity, a massive vessel that combined Council technology with human unpredictability. Before them lay the Vex supply base that had supported the invasion of Council space. "All units report ready, General," announced the communications officer. "Council and human forces standing by." Thomas studied the tactical display. The plan they had devised was unlike anything in Council military history. Part precise calculation, part calculated risk, with deliberate gaps where commanders could improvise. "Begin the assault," he ordered. "And remind all commanders, follow the Earth Doctrine. Be unpredictable." The battle that followed would later be studied in military academies across the galaxy. Council forces executed maneuvers that would have been considered heretical months earlier. Human squadrons provided the chaos element, changing tactics without warning, forcing the Vex to continually readjust. When it was over, the Vex base lay in ruins. The combined fleet had suffered losses, but far fewer than predicted. In the Council chamber days later, Terram made the announcement formal. "In recognition of their contribution to galactic security, Earth is hereby elevated to Class A status, with full voting rights on the Council." As applause filled the chamber, Thomas thought of how far they had come, from ridiculed newcomers to respected allies, all because the galaxy had finally seen value in humanity's chaotic nature. Admiral Lisa Torres stood at the command center of the massive Allied fleet. 200 ships, the largest force ever assembled in Council history, hung in formation around her flagship Humanity. The name had been suggested by Council representatives, a symbolic gesture that would have been unthinkable a year ago. Through the viewport, Lisa could see the swirling anomaly that led to Vex space. Intelligence gathered over months of battles had finally revealed the location of the Vex home system. Now the combined forces of the galaxy prepared for the final push. "All battle groups report ready, Admiral," said her executive officer, Commander Davis. Lisa nodded, studying the tactical display. Council forces formed the disciplined core of their formation, precise and powerful. Earth ships and their alien allies who had embraced the Earth Doctrine created a more fluid outer ring, ready to adapt to whatever they encountered. "This is Admiral Torres to all vessels," she broadcast. "We fought our way here together. Council precision and human adaptability, side by side. The Vex thought us predictable. They learned otherwise. Today we end this threat for good." The fleet surged forward into the anomaly. The journey through the dimensional corridor lasted mere minutes, but when they emerged, a terrifying sight awaited them. The Vex home system contained not planets but massive hive structures, artificial worlds built from harvested materials. And defending them was a Vex armada 3 times larger than intelligence had predicted. "They were expecting us," Commander Davis said, voice tight with tension. Lisa's mind raced. Their carefully planned attack now faced overwhelming odds. Council commanders were already transmitting requests for orders, falling back on their need for hierarchy in moments of crisis. "The plan has changed," Lisa announced to the fleet, implementing Contingency Earth. Throughout the Allied fleet, human officers took more active roles. The rigid formation dissolved into smaller, more agile battle groups. Some pressed forward in direct assault. Others performed feinting maneuvers. A few appeared to retreat, only to circle back from unexpected vectors. The Vex, masters of pattern recognition, found themselves facing an enemy that refused to follow patterns. The battle raged for hours. Ships were lost on both sides. Lisa's flagship took heavy damage, forcing her to transfer command twice as systems failed. Yet the Allied forces pressed on, their tactics shifting constantly. The turning point came when a Council science vessel, protected by human escorts, managed to deliver a specially designed virus into the central Vex hive. The virus, a collaboration between Council precision and human unpredictability, spread through the Vex network, causing cascading failures in their coordination. "They're breaking formation," reported the tactical officer. "Vex ships are losing cohesion." Lisa ordered the final assault. Council battleships delivered precision strikes against the now vulnerable hive structures, while human-led squadrons kept the confused Vex fleet occupied. When it was over, the Vex threat had been neutralized, not exterminated. Humans had insisted on that point, against some Council advice, but contained and cut off from further expansion. The journey back to Council space was subdued. They had won, but at great cost. Yet something profound had changed in the relationship between humanity and the galaxy. 3 months later, Lisa stood in the Grand Council chamber as the new Earth monument was unveiled. Located at the very spot where humans had once been mocked as primitive, the simple stone pillar bore an inscription in the common galactic language. "The strength of the galaxy lies not in perfection, but in diversity." High Councilor Terem, speaking with genuine respect, addressed the assembled representatives. For centuries, the Council believed advancement meant perfection. Earth taught us that true strength comes from embracing different approaches. Today, we formalize this wisdom by establishing the Galactic Defense Academy on Earth, where all species will learn to balance order with adaptability. Lisa watched as Jackson Adams, the first human ambassador who had faced such condescension years ago, stepped forward to accept the honor. His eyes met hers across the chamber, sharing a moment of quiet triumph. Later, walking through the station's main concourse, Lisa paused at a viewport overlooking Earth ships docking alongside Council vessels. Young officers from dozens of species mingled together, some heading to Earth for training, others returning from joint missions. "Did you ever imagine this?" asked Jackson, joining her at the window. Lisa shook her head. "When I joined the fleet, I just wanted to prove humans belonged out here. And now they're learning from us," Jackson said with wonder in his voice. A group of Council cadets passed by, led by a human instructor teaching them about controlled chaos and creative problem-solving. The galaxy had discovered what humans had known all along, that perfection was less valuable than adaptability when facing an unpredictable universe. "They mocked Earth," Lisa said quietly, "until the galaxy needed exactly what makes us human."